My name is Anthony Bartolacci, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Sensor Tower. It's great to be here in Berlin talking to so many leaders and innovators across the app industry. What I'll be doing this morning is doing a little bit of a recap of what we saw in 2024 from a macro perspective, and also highlighting some really interesting case studies and apps that were employing innovative strategies to achieve great growth. Before I get into sort of my substantive remarks, I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk about what's been new at Sensor Tower. For those who work with Sensor Tower, you might be aware that in March of this year, we acquired Data AI. This was a really exciting moment in our company's history, and it's been, frankly, a very fun, challenging, exhausting, but really rewarding couple of quarters with the Sensor Tower and Data AI teams working together. Without getting into too much of detail, I think what's been most encouraging is with these two companies working together, we've just identified so many areas where we can bring additional value to our partners and customers across the industry. Our data sets really complement one another very well. Adding both sets of input data together present the opportunity to really level up in terms of accuracy, consistency, and insights. So if anybody has more questions on that, you can find the Sensor Tower team. They're in the presenting hall. They'd be happy to go through the timeline and what we're expecting in terms of having preview data available and when the platform is going to be updated. So you can grab one of them. That's it for the salesy part of the presentation. And now I'd love to sort of get into some of those insights. So starting things off on a really positive foot, for the non-gaming app segment of the market, we saw really terrific growth over the last 12 months. You could see almost 25% gains in revenue for that non-app part of the market, and that's globally across both Android and iOS. I think what's really encouraging is the growth was coming from all pockets of the app ecosystem, driven by things like premiumization, more in-app subscriptions. Obviously, AI was a big boost to that segment of the market. But as you can see, it's growing on a pretty lofty base to begin with. So we're adding about $13 billion in spend on this part of the market. If we kind of quickly look at games, because they're still leveling out from the hyper growth they had during the pandemic, they're still growing mid-single digits, but not nearly as quick as the non-gaming side of the ecosystem. Moving over to downloads, we're not quite seeing as robust growth, but I think that makes sense in a lot of ways. For the non-gaming portion of the ecosystem, pretty flat to up, half a percentage point. On the gaming side, down high single digits, mostly driven by declines on the Android side. Kind of peeling back what's going on the download portion, we do see a focus on legacy apps across categories and just slightly less of an emphasis on new launches. So, not that consumers are not looking for new applications to download, but with all the innovation on existing apps, it sort of makes sense that this is leveling off at a pretty robust, almost 100 billion total downloads across all consumers globally. So as I mentioned, in the really exciting non-gaming slice of the app ecosystem that's up almost 25% year over year, we are seeing growth from all categories, which is really exciting and encouraging to see. Probably not surprising, the largest categories are a driver of the lion's share of that growth. So entertainment, of course, contributing almost a third of that 12 to 13 billion in incremental revenue year over year. But you can see with that chart on stage left, your right, that all categories are really contributing to that. And again, premiumization, finding new ways to keep users engaged, subscriptions coming from new and different categories are all responsible for that increase in revenue coming from this segment of the market. And just, looking at it one other way, You can see for all of the top 10 categories, they were growing at least 10% year over year. So when I say it's kind of equally distributed among some of those top categories, that's what I mean. In entertainment, of course, the big names like TikTok and Disney are responsible for a meaningful portion of that growth. And then in terms of just trends within that almost cuts across categories, AI being a really big contributor, not just sort of AI specific apps, but apps boosted by that type of technology. And you can see, again, like the AI contributions to so much of this growth in downloads, where Gemini was growing almost 300%. So even with flattish growth in downloads year over year, there are really exciting pockets that are driven by innovation and new technology, just highlighting there's still so many opportunities throughout the app ecosystem. So with that as kind of a table setter, understanding what the year of 2024 was from a top-down perspective, I wanted to get into a couple case studies that really exemplify some of those trends and where we're seeing accelerated growth coming from. And the first one we wanted to highlight is Duolingo, because it's an application and it's a service that checks a lot of those boxes. So one thing that we saw at the Sensor Tower team that was really exciting was that Duolingo saw about 8 million more downloads over its very kind of important summer season in 2024 versus the prior year. And this additional 8 million new installations was driven by multiple factors and a lot of things that the company is doing well. It's also coming from different geographical locations, both established and more mature markets and more nascent and emerging markets as well. You can obviously see the inflection point on that chart there over the last couple months. So one of the catalysts for that 8 million incremental downloads we identified is just brand appeal. And maybe that's a harder thing for newer apps to achieve, but does show the value of becoming sort of ubiquitous within a category. And Duolingo actually, through all this outsized growth, increased its market share, already being the leader by about 5 percentage points. But one of the ways it did it, and you can see, from this sort of heat map above me, is by doing better with search. This is kind of just isolating France, but you can see that the downloads coming from Duolingo related search was up over 100% from a couple of years ago, adding hundreds of thousands of downloads incrementally. You can also see that Duolingo's strong brand name is allowing it to win when consumers are searching for competitor apps. So they're thinking about a language learning app. They may type in one competitor, but Duolingo comes up and it invites the opportunity to download and engage with the service. So obviously, having that really strong brand appeal and organic strategy has been part of Duolingo's success in 2024. But what's incremental to the story is Duolingo really ramping up what it's doing in terms of paid advertising across digital. So you can see the ramp in spend across several key channels: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. This has added an additional tailwind to an already successful story. And we're seeing this again across established markets as well as niche markets, which means Duolingo is being really strategic as to where they see opportunities for growth. And you can look at the outsized impact of YouTube as a channel for bringing new downloads, but also some of the popular social networks. So it's one thing, obviously, to just have advertisements out there, but we want to be able to show that there's ROI associated with those advertisements. And per Sensor Tower data, we are seeing that this increased ad spend and visibility is driving new installations. So, this chart is showing the South Korea market, which is one of the markets we identified as being a driver for Duolingo's 2024 success, and you can see the growth in paid downloads. So at Sensor Tower, we're able to differentiate between organic downloads and paid downloads, and you can see that paid downloads in the region have really taken off in the last 12 to 14 months or so, and that overlaps with the period where Duolingo has had a much more robust digital advertising strategy. And it's not just, having ads everywhere and being unfocused, but wanting to make sure those advertisements are targeting key trends and topics. So when Duolingo's been doing advertising, they've been capitalizing on people wanting to learn English or maybe advance their English speaking proficiency. They've also been taking advantage of AI technology with their Lily chatbot. So these are all themes that they've incorporated into their advertising that has helped their advertising be successful. The last sort of component to Duolingo's success in 2024 kind of goes back to the theme of organic interest, but I think Duolingo's done a great job of using its very popular social channels as a way to increase brand visibility and drive downloads. So we've kind of put on the same chart TikTok followers for Duolingo alongside organic downloads. So you can see there's a neat correlation there. And it's no surprise that, we're seeing TikTok popularity, influence, app downloads, app engagement. So this is a really innovative way to capitalize on the existing interest in your name and your brand. Switching gears from language to more fintech, we also wanted to highlight Monzo as a true success story in 2024. So Monzo, being a very popular fintech app, primarily in the UK, what was super noteworthy about Monzo in 2024 is that in terms of daily active users, it overtook Barclays to be the top fintech service in the region, which is really a monumental achievement. And you can see sort of Monzo's growth versus some of the traditional retail banks in the UK on that chart. One of the drivers of 2024 success is, again, robust digital advertising spending. Ad spending for Monzo in measured channels was up about 150%, which is obviously a non-trivial amount, but Monzo saw 10% growth year over year in terms of daily active users, whereas Barclays was really flat from 2023 to 2024. So while some of the more legacy apps were seeing stagnant growth, Monzo and its more alternative approach to banking services was able to see accelerated growth and overtake that top position. Another sort of driver for that success, it wasn't just advertising, it's that I think Monzo has been a little bit more nimble, taking advantage of ASO strategies, continuing to update the app. And it's perhaps no surprise that sort of a newer service that is digital at its core is a little bit more proficient at using all the strategies available within the app ecosystem, whereas some of these legacy services that are kind of newer to the digital space are a little slower to adapt those type of user acquisition strategies. So one thing we, kind of diving into the data and wondering like, where is Monzo's success coming from? It's perhaps not surprising that they see an over-indexed amount of cross-app usage with other fintech applications. So what that means is looking at the users who are already using Lloyds or Barclays, a higher percentage of them also use the Monzo app versus just two of those legacy retail banks. And I think that's pretty intuitive as to how we all kind of use those type of services. You may not have an account with two retail banks, but you may be able to use your retail banking account and a more innovative and non-traditional fintech service to perform complementary services. So that, I think the strategy of being able to take users from that existing user base from retail banks has been really a tailwind for Monzo's success. Of course, again, highlighting, I think, Monzo's success on the digital strategy and just being nimble and wanting to be where consumers are. I think you can see based on the reviews left in the App Store and the Google Play Store, consumers are highlighting some of these features that are much more relevant to what's happening in the marketplace. So Monzo's advertising strategy, understanding that consumers may be crunched by inflationary impact, that's coming up in those reviews. So it's a great way to sort of sanity check if your advertising strategy, if your marketplace positioning is working. And you can see those sort of keywords and themes are correlated with very positive reviews. So that's what people are taking advantage of this service for. And that's the way Monzo is increasing its visibility. Great. The last theme I wanted to touch on is short drama apps. And this is kind of a fun one, because just when you think consumer engagement and attention spans can't get any shorter, we now have the rise of 1 to 2 minute long dramas. So if a reel was too long for you, you can now go ahead and watch these short bites of television and dramatic scripted content. This is something that had been popular in China for a little while, but it's really kind of moving westward into North America and parts of Europe. And you can sort of see this is a really new phenomenon, almost no impact from the top several short drama apps in 2023. But as soon as we kind of flipped the script and turned into 2024, these applications really started taking the marketplace by storm. Now, this type of success doesn't just happen. You can see that paid downloads were driving about 50% of this global install growth that we're seeing in 2024. So there has been a really concerted advertising effort behind the success of these properties. But nevertheless, they're kind of opening new ways to engage with consumers and finding new pockets of interest. And I think what's fascinating about the success of these short drama apps, and perhaps something that apps across categories can learn from, is this is not just stealing attention from other non-gaming apps. It's not simply a substitute for Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney or any of the traditional players in short-form video. Actually, when we're looking at, again, sort of that most likely to use cross-app affinity metrics, we're seeing a lot of gaming in the top 100 apps used by those downloaders and users of the short drama applications, which is saying, I think to us that the lines between gaming and non-gaming are becoming blurrier every day. And consumers are very accustomed to switching back and forth between traditional gaming and other forms of entertainment. I think it speaks to why it's so imperative for many applications to be able to fulfill different parts of engagement and ways to engage with their user base. But you can see even, as we get into LATAM, EMEA, the US, that games are sort of the big gamers are the big driver of users of these services. That sort of concludes my prepared remarks today. It's great kind of spending time with all of you. Thanks so much for your attention. If you have any questions about Sensor Tower, you can find our team there. Thanks to James and the APS team. So I'll turn it over and hopefully not walk in front of the speaker again. Thank you.